Welcome to Breaking the Couch, a weekly conversation demystifying what happens in and behind the therapy scene to support your healing journey. We're your hosts.
I'm Dr. Dowtin, a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified school psychologist, and a trauma specialist with Playfully Psyched.
And I'm Dr. Joharchi with Soft Art Psychology, a licensed clinical psychologist.
We're here aiming to provide you with mental health tools to address the cycle of generational trauma across the age span, from infancy and childhood to adulthood.
For more information, visit our Instagram page at Breaking the Couch or our website, breakingthecouch.com. While we hope you love listening to and learning from our podcast, it's not a substitute for a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
All right, so we are joining in today, really just days. I think that the decision of the Supreme Court in the United States to overturn Roe versus Wade came down on Friday, and we're actually recording this on Tuesday. It's been coming up for some of my patients in sessions. Obviously, it's been on my mind. It's all over my social media feed and just thinking about our human rights. And I thought that it could be a good space for us to talk about this together and maybe provide some healing space for listeners and just a place to know that they're not alone in these thoughts. What do you think about that, Dr. Joharchi?
Yeah, I think it'd be hard not to. Yeah, I think we've got to kind of address what's here. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I think, it's so much, and then it's also like, well, what do you say, right? I think
Exactly.
a lot of people, especially those with uteruses or who love someone with the uterus, are really feeling like, and I'm going to say I have a uterus. I don't know if that's surprising to people, but I have one. It just feels like the government is deciding what I do with my body simply because I have a uterus. And for me, and I know that this can be different in among racial groups, but it's also been surreal in the fact that like it's not surprising for me, and it's what's happened to Black women and Black people with uteruses for 500 years in this country, that it's like there's this decision. They're like, well, they've already been governing what we do and can't do with our bodies. Like, I hate to go back there, but how do we talk about anything in the US and not go back to the enslavement of Africans? And we were bred, right? And we were bred and not allowed to raise our children within families. Our babies were literally murdered, and a trigger warning for people. I guess I'm going deeper than I realized I would go, but our babies were murdered by the enslavers and their wives at the time. So I'm having this conflicted, it's horrible, it's not fair, it's not okay. And at the same time, I'm not surprised. And I think I've been a little bit more outraged, or just like, I felt like there's been a community of people who have been complacent when Black women specifically have been saying, hey, we've been fighting on the front lines for this for a long time. And there've been a community of people who've been complacent. And then towards the end, they're like, oh, we need to fight and help us organize and do all these things. And it's like, you're just now showing up. Like, we've been here, we've been saying this. But now that community is also now feeling it right now, understanding like, oh, they can do this to us too. I think that's some of the things that are coming up for me. I don't know. I've been talking a while.
No, absolutely. I'm happy you did share that, and I'll just say like a blanketed trigger warning for everything I say for this episode as well.
Smart idea.
Right. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes me think about a lot of me included, right? White girl in the room, right? So a lot of these instances have been suffocated, put down, and we're just joining the game. We're just joining the conversation where we're like, yeah, let's protest. What? Where have we been this whole time? And so, and this isn't just in America, right? Like in Israel, right? They sterilize without consent Ethiopian immigrants, right? And so these type of practices have been happening to AFAB folks, people who are assigned female at birth. So both women and people of other genders who were assigned female at birth by their medical provider, their midwife, whoever. These things have been happening currently. I'm not going to say even historically, right?
Yeah,
So
even currently in this country.
Exactly. So it's like now we want to jump in and say, yeah, this is an outrage. It always has been. And so, I absolutely hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yes, exactly. And, we're talking about it's that duality, right? Because there's a sterilization of one group, right? And there's that birth dearth. I don't know if you've heard about, oh my, is it Jane Elliott? I think her name is. She's referenced, we'll have to pull it up for listeners, but she's referenced this book called Birth Dearth. And it basically outlines and talks about the fact that in the US, white people have the racial majority in the country to some extent. And in this book, it outlined that 60% of abortions are white families, white fetuses, right? So this book talks about, if we can just stop those abortions, then we can maintain the white majority in the country. It literally outlined that they would need to do. So there's
I have chills over here. Yeah.
So there's a sterilization of
Wow.
groups that look like me, skin color of mine, and of that nature, and the basically trying to farm more white lives, right? And so, and then we even hear it. I don't know if you saw the news, and there was that slip up. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but there was a supposedly like a Freudian slip, is what we're calling it, where I think she said she was supposed to be saying, this is a celebration for the rights of life, but she said this is a celebration for white life. And she like praised Trump for this and everyone, but because it was a slip, but people still clapped and smiled, right? So it's like, oh, they're saying the quiet parts, the inner thoughts out loud now. Like that was a Freudian slip. I don't care if it was slip of the tongue. And it's also like, look at the audience and how excited they were at this, because this decision is about farming white lives. At least that's how it feels like to most of us, right? It's about governing a person's body who has a uterus and telling them what they can and cannot do with it. Because yes, the Supreme Court justice basically, or the Supreme Court decision takes it away as a federal thing, of federal protection or federal right, and it gives the power back over to states. Well, there are some states that have already had these abortion laws on the books, and they were waiting for this. Like there are states who had literally just passed this whole like the heartbeat law. So you can't do an abortion for any reason. That's the other piece. For any reason, once there's a heartbeat, and you can hear a heartbeat around 6 weeks. Most people that have a uterus, if they find out they're pregnant, it is usually around week 8 before you even realize that you're pregnant. So and then we're thinking about all the cases of, there's termination for medical reasons. They're trying to get away with that. So I was watching a feed where there was a what are they called? Obstetrician. And he was saying that he presented a case of a woman that he had, and she had like this condition where they did all these things. She had gone through an IUD, which is like 97% accurate, but she still got pregnant. So she did all the precautions that she could take and still got pregnant. And then the condition that she had was a 90% mortality rate if she carried the fetus to term. So she had a 10% chance of survival. And so with the law and wherever he practices now, he was like, as the law states now, I would have had to tell her, well, hopefully you're in that 10%, even though you were in the 3% for the other thing that was 97% accurate. Maybe you'll live, 10% chance you'll survive.
I wouldn't want to choose to do medicine in that situation. Like, why would you want to participate in that?
Right.
That's really creepy.
Right. When you know that you could actually save her life.
Yeah, you have every tool to be able to like help her out if that's
Yeah,
what she wants, you know?
exactly. So it's these, you know, uh, how do people feel safe in a world, in a country that is literally um, trying to govern their bodies? Even more so. Like, it's not new. I think that's the other thing that I like keep this isn't
Right.
new. It's just they're saying the quiet parts out loud. And then did you hear, I know we're focusing on this, but there's you're like, no, I didn't hear. Clarence Thomas wants the Supreme Court to reconsider the decisions of the cases that impact same-sex marriage.
I mean, I figured that's what we've all been thinking is gonna happen next, right? Yeah.
The only one that they haven't attacked, he didn't attack, was the one for interracial marriage, but he also has a white wife. He's Black and has white wife,
Right.
so that affects him. So he's not gonna recommend that one be touched, but all the others, yeah. So I don't know. I think. Go ahead. You want to say
And
something?
then, well, no, I just also related to what you said about this coming up in sessions, right? So,
Mhm.
whether they bring it up or I bring it up, it's been coming up in sessions. And I just
Mhm.
wanted to take a moment to talk about grief, because I think that there's the trauma of like hearing that AFAB folks will have that much less bodily autonomy.
Mhm.
There's the trauma of like understanding what that might mean for you, for the people with uteruses that you love,
Mhm.
um, for your daughter, for your mom, for your friend, whoever.
Mhm.
And then there's also these waves of grief, right? So I conceptualize grief as like sometimes we're cool, we're in our day to day, and then sometimes it hits, and all of a sudden we
Mhm.
feel tired, and we feel like maybe like a heaviness, like almost like
Mhm.
a heavy wet blanket is on us. And so I would just want to say, like, if you're experiencing any grief, like, please do reach out to your communities, to your therapist, to your supports, whatever that looks like for you,
Mhm.
because this is a time to just be super gentle on ourselves, and do whatever else you need to do to contribute,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And being like mindful that grief could be a part of what you're hearing right now.
Yeah, exactly. What you're hearing right now, what you're feeling, and that it's
Mhm.
not, I like the way you explained it, just kind of can hit you sometimes, but that it's not just this one and done. It's okay if, again, this decision came down on Friday, whenever you're listening to this, however far in the future you hear this, even if it hits you at that point, or it comes and it ebbs and it flows, that's okay too. And like you said, like Dr. Joharchi said, looking out for support, community-based support,
Mhm.
self-care, therapy, venting, whatever that looks like for
Mhm.
you, is allowed and okay, because this is a big thing that can impact billions of lives. Um, and then I think about countries that hopefully they're no longer doing this, but I think about countries that have kind of looked up to, quote unquote, the United States to set their
Right. Oh
laws
gosh.
and
Mhm.
admired. I was like, no, 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 please don't use,
Yeah. Don't
please
look
don't.
at us as a model. No,
No for anything. Please don't.
no.
Just stop. Look away, please. Something, I
I
don't
have
know.
so much to say about that. I'm gonna just, yeah. That has to do with corporations and has nothing to do with, well, has a lot to do with what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even that, I think we should also just pull that tip up. And I've been like, so I'm not usually this, I don't know, it's been an interesting thing. So hearing people talk about the period tracker apps.
Right. Right. Yes.
And so just the recommendations, and I'm not saying I have a recommendation about this or not. I'm try to be as secure with my data as possible, which is hard in this day and age. But the recommendations have been out there that, go back to handwriting or typing up without a cloud to track your cycle, because as states start cracking down and implementing these laws, there may be ways that they want to track to to prevent um, people from traveling to other states Because there are going to, this is the United States. There are going to hopefully be states that are going to remain, open to abortion and whatever those things look like.
Yeah.
Though there might only be a handful, though, right?
So
There might
far,
be like
there's
5
like
or
a
6.
handful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's like 5 or 6 states that will probably be okay. But then our country's so big and things are spread out. So if you're in, somewhere in the middle of the country that's most likely not to allow abortion, it's going to be hard for you to make your way all the way
Financial
over.
resources, like, do you have
Mhm.
a job? Do you have time off at that job? Do you have transportation? The whole
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. So with the peer tracker apps, if, again, if the whole like Big Brother 1984 type thing is, and we know that we're being surveilled in certain ways. So anyway, the peer tracking apps are sharing that data to other third parties. They could be sharing that data to the government. And so be mindful of what you're doing to track your cycle. Um, because yeah, if you just never know. And I mean, again, we're thinking about some of these laws don't want you to be able to have an abortion, even if you are raped, even if you are, your life is at risk. So there's some states that will have no stipulations around it. It's just going to be a hard no. Um, so just kind of, you know, thinking about that and being safe with your data in the way that you feel comfortable, and that you can. And there are networks that, um, of people who can help, teach you how to even track your cycle. There are some therapists that we could show you how to do that if you
Mhm.
work in perinatal mental health and understand what that looks like, again, because if you're in some of those states, some of the physicians might not legally be able to tell you those things. Just has so many ramifications throughout systems. Um, and you might not feel comfortable, like you might not feel like you know who to trust at that point. So be on the lookout for some of these networks because they exist. And again, within the Black community, I know some birth workers that have been planning for this for years.
Wow.
So there is a system in place. There's some networks and some connections.
Mhm.
So it's reminiscent of the Underground Railroad. So just
That's what
don't.
just came to my mind. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
They exist, and so it's, remove your don't talk about your cycle, don't talk about those things on social media, keep that things private and off out of the clouds, um, off the web, as they say. But yeah, I my heart goes out to all of us that are feeling this, you know, these times. I used to love being a part of history in certain ways, but not in this way. This is not, I don't want to, no, thank you. So, yeah, I've talked a lot. What do you have?
No, that was really helpful. I'm so happy that you shared that information about period trackers too, and just let people know kind of what they might want to do there.
Mhm,
Because yeah, I've worked with folks with various issues around those things, and tracking was a utility. And so now you're talking about, well, now that we know what we know, you might want to do it a different way if that's what you
mhm,
you know. So yeah, we talked about that. We talked about the historical progression of this problem.
mhm,
That's what I'll call it. We talked a little bit about bodily autonomy of AFAB folks and how that's um, being stripped down even more. And we talked about grief and then reaching out to community supports, to supports that feel right and safe for you.
mhm.
And yeah, that's kind of what I have from this. How about you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that recap. Just
Mhm.
reminding folks that we are, available through comments and direct messages on places like Instagram. You can, of course, leave comments on YouTube, visit our website, leave a comment, fill out the survey just to say, hey, we'd love you to talk more about this, go into more detail about that, ask questions,
Mhm.
give us, ideas. It's all welcome. Visit our bookshop. A small portion of that goes back to us so we can make more episodes. But then also the main goal of the bookshop is saving local bookstores, as we kind of hinted in that whole like capitalism and big business thing. A major company, kind of wiped out a bunch of really great local bookstores, and bookshop helps those that are still around and trying to survive and thrive. So yeah, until next time.
If you are looking for a therapist for yourself or your child, you can visit our websites, playfullypsych.com or softheartpsychology.com.
We appreciate you joining us this week and can't wait till there's another opportunity to jump on the couch with you next week.